Mrs. Danielle DeVita back with another video. I overheard someone say that marriage is overrated. A lot of women say, I like the strong silent type. Well, a lot of men like the feminine silent type. And for sure, it's going down. So a lot of times people are not getting the value. When to speak and when to be quiet is one of the most powerful. She's going to be aggressive, thinking that. And as someone who's been married for 12 years, she's driven, not lazy. And this will make yourself and get on the right path. That understand that you might be doing a disservice to your daughter. If you don't help her understand vetting and proper decision making, now she's going to be a basket case later. If you don't help her understand emotional intelligence, she's going to hold on to a lot of emotional baggage. If you don't. Thank you for tuning in to Mrs. Danielle DeVita. I am a relationship and femininity coach, and today we're going to talk about 7 toxic ways that could be exhibiting in your relationship. So essentially, 7 ways to realize when your relationship is toxic and when to let go and gracefully bow out. So this is for both men and women. I am a relationship and femininity coach. I have been married for 13 years, and I often say that there's two ways that would show that you are in the wrong type of relationship, essentially a toxic or unhealthy relationship. Number 1 is if you are a man, you are not exuding masculine energy as you should. If you're a woman, you're not exuding feminine energy as you should. Or you are in a relationship longer than you need to be in. And we often talk about masculine and feminine energy. I have a book that's out for men, Command Respect from the Woman You Want. This helps a man to exude his masculine energy while still commanding a respect. As a woman, I feel like I'll be able to explain how a woman would respect you. Right? And how a woman could look to you as a man to be respected and to submit to that man. And I'm a woman who I say I submit to my husband, and it's been 13 years. We have a great dynamic, great relationship. So if you want from a woman's perspective how a woman would respect you, this is a good book, and none of this is taken away from your masculinity at all. I come to this conclusion in this book by interviewing and speaking to a plethora of men, of course, off camera, and coming up with this consensus of what a masculine man who gets respect, what this man looks like in this book. So definitely get this book. I have books coming out for women and teenage girls. So I will have that book coming out soon, going into the spring, summer time. So a lot of times we're in relationships longer than we need to be in. So we're not going to talk about the energies in this segment. We're just going to strictly talk about being in a relationship longer than you need to be in. And longer than you need to be in is there's a point in a relationship where there should have been a crossroad. Boundaries were broken. Someone has broken, there was a deal breaker. And even though there was a deal breaker, there was no conversation or talk about how the relationship is going to turn around from that point. You just continued on. So the toxic relationship is continuing because there was no say, hey, stop, let's talk about it, let's fix this. You guys continue on into the relationship. So let's go into 7 ways that you can exhibit toxic, or when you should walk away from these types of toxic relationships. Number 1, you are trying to change the person. So maybe you don't like what this person is wearing, their image, how they are as a person, their personality. You are trying to mold them. You are doing the whole Stepford wife, Stepford husband type of thing. You are trying to mold the perfect person because you believe that the person you're with is not perfect. So this is a big thing because a lot of women, especially, they fall in love with the man that they want to be with, the man they hope they can be with, the man that their potential. But there's nothing about the man now that they currently like. I say this is often with women. I'm often one to say date potential. But when I say potential, I mean you're dating a guy who has a potential to be this great, successful guy. And right now you see the building blocks. You see the quality of that through his efforts and him seeing his own potential. So it can't just be you seeing this and he doesn't see this, right? So you want to make sure that you see this man's potential, but he also sees it as well. But what I'm talking about is a woman actually doesn't like the man for who he is now. Nothing about him she likes, but she likes what he could possibly be. But in the moment, right now, there's no connection. I want to make sure, and men do this as well. They're with this woman and they're with, the possibility of her doing this. So basically what you like about them is what they can be. But right now, they're not doing that, or they're not even making efforts to do that. This is a toxic relationship because you're constantly going to be, if you're not doing it already out loud in your head, comparing them to someone else. And you definitely don't want to compare your woman or your man, whichever who is listening, to someone else, you know. And it makes it easier also for cheating, because if you find someone who does have the things you want, you're likely to cross the line, whether it's emotional or physical or, you know, sexual cheating. You don't want to cross those lines. So you want to be with someone who you find attractive, someone who actually has a personality that you like now, the lifestyle you like now, the finances you like now. I always say, no one has to be rich or anything, but I do think you want to be with someone who's emotionally and financially stable. So you don't want someone who is, oh, well, they could be stable if. No, they need to be stable now. So whatever vices they have that makes them unstable, whether it's a mental instability, whether it's a vice that they have, you know, a gambling or drinking, any of those types of things that causes them to not be emotionally and mentally stable now, this is a toxic relationship if you continue on when there's no stability there. Same thing with financial stability. If a person, they don't have to have a lot of money, but they need to be financially stable. If you're with someone and you don't feel like they're stable in that way, then don't be with them, because that's going to create a toxic relationship. You're going to find yourself comparing them to others. Find someone that you like right now. It's great that you see potential in them, but what connection do you have with them now? What do you like about them now? All right. Another thing would be if someone is chipping away at your self-esteem. This could be men or women. Women sometimes make a man feel like he ain't ish. You know, like make him feel like he can't do nothing, he's nobody. Now, if you think that he is nobody, then why are you with this person? If you think that she's not really doing anything and she's no good, why are you with her? So essentially, if you're chipping away at a person's self-esteem, you are probably already comparing them to other people. Not even another person of the same gender, but you're just comparing them to others. Like, look at you, you look like this. Especially when it comes to weight, we see often in TV where someone is chipping away someone's self-esteem because they don't have the look or the weight that the general society says is acceptable or normal. You see people chip away maybe at someone's it could be their skin color or their actual skin condition. You know, sometimes people have elements on their skin that, like acne, things like that, that makes people feel bad and shameful. And if you're with someone who's making you feel ashamed of who you are, making you feel bad about you being in your own skin, you definitely don't want to be with someone like that. Because most of the time, if you know, any type of verbal and mental abuse turns into something physical, right? So this is something you want to stop right away. This isn't something you allow to continue. This is toxic. You must stop it right away. If it's already happened, really, these are the ones where you give only one chance, right? So if they do this again, you should be out of the relationship. This is not one of those things where you give multiple opportunities for that. So that was two things. The third thing is something that's pretty common and people think it's okay, but it's actually toxic. A lot of yelling and screaming. I'm not saying that you've never had a raised voice, you've never had an attitude, because Lord knows I'm sarcastic sometimes, but I think that sometimes communication can become toxic. So there's different forms, and I'll name, we'll go into a little other forms of communication that's not in how you communicate. It's people actually stonewalling people, but we'll get to that in a second. So this one is more like you're yelling, you're cursing, you're using profanity, you're nasty, you're disrespectful, and this is like blatant disrespect. This is blatant disgust with this person, and you're talking to them in this manner. You're on level 10. You guys are, throwing bows, you're throwing things. So this is one of those relationships where it's just toxic all the way around, because if you've gotten to the yelling and screaming, sometimes you've gotten physical, sometimes You've been disrespectful. As I say often, if you've watched my channel enough, you know that when the respect is out the door, the relationship starts to crumble big time. Right? There's a few things that can cause that. Trust, respect, and resentment can cause a relationship to crumble. But respect, even on both ends, a man not getting respect or a woman not getting the respect that she feels that she deserves in a relationship. And respect could mean many different things for people. It could mean something as far as boundaries. It could mean profanity. It could mean something not being physical, not being aggressive. All of these things revolve around what people feel like they're not getting their respect. Maybe you're not respecting their time or their space, or just talking to them, just using profanity is alone disrespectful for many people. Raising your voice, depending which groups, but a person who is usually going this far, raising your voice is not a huge thing, which is why they allow this type of thing in a relationship to continue. People would typically say, oh, people fight. People do have, disagreements. But this is unacceptable. Think about it like this. At work, if someone was yelling at someone at work, you would find this would be like, oh my God, what are they doing? This is a work environment. Why? Because this is not something you do. You don't just yell at other grown people like this. And think about it. If you don't do this with people you don't sleep with or have children with or are married to or say you love, why would you go home to something you don't you know that's wrong to do to a coworker or a boss or a subordinate? Why would you do this to your significant other? So think of it like that. You don't want to a lot of times people show their best selves to the outside world, and at home they feel like I can be myself, so they let loose, and then you get all of the stress, all of the anger, all of the resentment, all of the whatever they're feeling. And no, that's unacceptable for them to dump that out on you. They can go to a therapist and talk about these things, but they can't dump that out on you, or you should not let them dump that out on you, right? So because it's unhealthy if they do that. So the goal is to ensure that you are making sure that you nip it in the bud. You tell them, hey, this is unacceptable. We should be able to have a conversation, and it should not go from here to here. If we can't do this at work, we definitely don't want to do this at home, because home is the love environment. This is where we show our love to one another. If you're not doing these things at work, if it's unacceptable at work, you definitely want to know that it's unacceptable at home, because this is the person that you say you love. These over here are the people you don't know. So why show your best to someone who won't see you behind closed doors? The person who see you all the time, day in, day out, they want your best self. They deserve your best self, which moves me to I think it was number 4 I'm on now. The next one will be neglect. If you find yourself neglecting yourself, you're not putting your best foot forward in a relationship, and that's usually in your image and your look. You notice you don't care anymore. You're not showering or putting on the clothes or doing whatever to make yourself available for your partner. If you're neglecting yourself and neglecting them and their needs, or just not looking the part, a lot of times it's because there's something going on in the relationship. Why do you feel that there's no need to put yourself together anymore? Why do you feel that there's no need to work out ever again? Why do you feel you should never want to look good at all? Why do you feel like it's a lost cause? What's happening in the relationship that they're no longer, that you never want to make, you don't even care about being desired, and you don't want to be desirable to them. So that is another form of a toxic relationship, something that you should get to the root cause of. Why are you guys not hugging and kissing and loving on each other anymore? So that is a sign that the relationship is growing toxic, because then that still moves to you start to compare yourself to others, or you start to get to the point where you're looking to others as them being somehow worth you getting dressed up for, worth you looking good for, going to the gym and doing this and that. Sometimes it could be someone is chipping away at your self-esteem, so you feel there's no need to put yourself together. But that's the time to leave the relationship, when you no longer feel like there's self-care, when you no longer care about how you look and care about how they feel when there's neglect in that relationship in that form. The next one would be stonewalling. So number 5 would be stonewalling. Stonewalling is when people are avoiding a conversation. It's not necessarily the silent treatment. It's more so that they are preventing the conversation that's needed to be said from going on. Maybe they don't want to talk about it at all. Maybe they're unresponsive altogether. They're like, hey, you know what? I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to deal with this. There's some people that do it out of fear. They fear what's going to happen next in that type of conversation. A good example would be if someone is, I'll say, sometimes we see this in relationships where there's a power dynamic and control, which is another form of a toxic relationship. But before I go into that, there's one person having a power balance, a control in the relationship. And when the other person wants to bring up a certain topic that's bothering them, they're like, no, we're not going to talk about this. Maybe someone's calling them out on their BS. And they don't want to talk about it. But this is essential for the relationship to move forward, because whatever it is, the deal breaker. It's a trust issue, it's a jealousy issue, it's a control issue, it's something of a deal breaker. And the person is getting to the point where they don't want to hear your view of what that is. So stonewalling is something that can really hurt a relationship, because this is what's needed this conversation is needed to get the relationship to move forward. Sometimes stonewalling could be could be from someone who was hurt. So if they're hurt, they don't want to have certain conversations and talk about it. And what the other person does is sometimes they go out and do things in spite, out of spite. They go out and drinking because at home they're not getting the conversation. They need to go out and be with someone else because the other person won't have that conversation, but that person is hurt. So they're shutting them out. They're pushing them out, and they don't want to have a type of conversation. So silent treatment is a little bit different, because this is you're actually just ignoring them. Stonewalling is where they're just unresponsive to a important type of conversation. Silent treatment is a form of toxic conversation as well, where they ignore you until you stop talking about whatever it is, and then they'll have a conversation with you, or as a sign to show that they're upset with you, they don't want to talk to you. Usually that may last a few days or a few weeks, or it could be just a few hours. But stonewalling is they just never want to have this conversation, but this conversation is something big, but they don't want to have it because maybe it's a soft spot. It's something they don't want to discuss. Or like I said, with a power dynamic, they want to control the conversation, control the narrative. So you talking about it is going to change the perspective. They want to leave it they want to control the conversation, not you. So then that moves to the power dynamic. It's a toxic situation if this person is controlling. When I say controlling, I mean they control pretty much how you think. They control your moves. So basically, when you are around, or when this significant other is around you, if you are the person being controlled, you feel like you can't speak for yourself. Maybe this person speaks for you. Or if you're that person, you're speaking for this person. You're telling them what to do, where to go. You're clocking their times in and out. It's like a heavy micromanaging. And they feel like they can't be themselves, their personality, or anything. So you definitely want to make sure that you are not with someone who's controlling your friends, how long you see your friends, how often you see your friend, where you're afraid and scared to be around this person. You don't want that. All right, so that is number 6. So it's a power dynamic issue, right? And number 7, the 7th red flag that this is a toxic relationship is you find that this person they don't show you appreciation. And I know it seems like, well, how is this toxic? Typically, when this person does not feel valued or appreciated, this also pushes the other person away, which could then move to neglect, like where they're neglecting themselves, no self-care. This also moves to feeling like, they have low self-esteem, like they're not needed. This moves to a lot of things. They may want to cheat. You may be feeling like you can't have this conversation over and over. You're having this conversation over and over again, but the other person does not want to talk about it because they feel like it's not an issue. And again, this isn't necessarily stonewalling, but they don't want to have this conversation because you feel like, what? So what? You don't feel appreciated, don't feel valued. But there's a lot of people in a relationship that feel like they're there, but they're just there. Most people want to be in a relationship where they feel valued. What if your job told you we don't really need your skills? It's good to have an extra pair of hands to do this job, or an extra person to do this, but your skills are take it or leave it. Well, that's how sometimes people are in a relationship. They make this other person feel like they're not needed, and they actually say it sometimes, that they're not needed. They say that you're not doing anything. So essentially, you're not enough for them. You don't feel like you're good enough, or that you can do for them. There's no role or value in the relationship. You guys are just going through the motions in the relationship, but they don't see any value. Maybe you guys are just hooking up. Maybe you guys are just sleeping together, but there's no real communication. You feel like you add no value to the relationship. You feel like you're not good enough for them because they don't appreciate who you are and what you bring to the relationship. Now, if you're someone who's not putting in any effort and you feel like they think that you're not good enough, that's still a reason to end the relationship, because if you're not putting anything in a relationship, obviously you don't want it, right? And if the other person is saying that you are not good enough, or you have no value, you add nothing to the relationship but just your body, men or women, because women are with, or money, if people are only with you clearly for things that has nothing to do with you, they could literally replace you with someone else with money. They could replace you with another person with body. They could replace you with someone else who is just a warm body to lay next to or do things with. It shows that they don't think you're good enough to be in a real, truly connected relationship. Right? And a lot of people don't think about that. That's why I talk about affirmations often. When you when you pour into someone and make them feel valued, make them feel loved and appreciated, and like they are enough for you, they're adequate, right? The way they are, that relationship can thrive. But it will not thrive if the person is always feeling like there's like, what am I here for? If they feel like, what are we doing? If it's always one of that, eventually the relationship will taper off. Eventually, people will start to neglect themselves and their looks. Eventually, this person is going to compare you to other people. Eventually, that relationship is just going to create and breed resentment. All right? So you definitely want to make sure you let the person know that they're good enough. They're valued. They're appreciated in a relationship. And their efforts are also appreciated. All right, so thank you so much for tuning in to Mrs. Danielle DeVita. Take care and have healthier relationships. We live in a world where femininity, marriages, family, and courting is no longer valued. We live in hookup culture, situationships, and struggle love. The number one reason women struggle in long-term relationships, number one, femininity, and number two, staying in a relationship or entertaining people longer than the woman should.
My name is Danielle DeVita, and I'm a relationship and femininity coach. I've been married for 12 years, and I want to help you get on your feminine journey and vet for the right man today. For more of my content, you can visit MrsDanielleDeVita.com, or you can go to YouTube, Instagram, or my Facebook page. Get on your feminine journey today.